Okay, I apologize for the hefsek. It's supposed to be back to back, but Baruch Hashem, Baruch Hashem, So, as we mentioned last time, the importance of learning these dinim. I just want to stress one Nakuda story. There's a famous Chabudi Daniel, one of the Peskim is gone a lot in the Pesach Shuvah, the Shulchan Aruch, and he writes, "V'negia dinei achaka." Derech klal, we find another din in these halachas that there's a machlokes, and we're machriya l'kula. He says when it comes to dinei achaka, it's a different story. Dinei achaka b'pnei hergel, because it is something very serious that may lead to something even more serious. Therefore, we actually don't run to be making like the shita hanekila. But before we actually start Dinei Archaka, I want to be later a few things. Since we don't have so much time, I do want to speak on the Yonam Chemanish Negela Maisa, common mistakes. And as I mentioned last week, hopefully you'll hear it as information. It's not again to you, but the reality is you never know, and therefore it's always important to chazan the dinner. So first of all, when we get to Vestus, we know that if a re'iyah came by day, a b'dika has to be performed during the day after the Zman Havest. Let's say it came 12 o'clock in the afternoon. Next month, it's Shais Manius, you have to calculate the difference. But let's say next month it comes out to 1 o'clock. So after 1 o'clock, a b'dika is performed. Sometimes it's a common mistake. People think, the b'dika is performed, she is mutaris. So the halacha is no, the entire oina has to be kept. If it's a day oina, that means from Netzach Hama until Shkia. And if it's a night oina, it means Shkia until Netzach Hama. Which is interesting. Usually go by Leisa Shach and Seis. Over here, based on Tracy Placey, which Alter Rebbe brings, we follow Shkia and Netz. We'll leave that for the side. Another thing, it's important to know, if a b'dika was forgotten on an oina, so if it's a vasa she'ena kavua, meaning it wasn't established 3 times, there's no clears, it wasn't a fixed cycle, then the halacha is, if a b'dika was forgot, you don't have to do anything. If it's an oina beininus, or it's a vasa kavua, which an oina beininus al pidin has the same status as a vasa kavua, then a b'dika has to be done as soon as you remember. You remember 2-3 days from now, 4 days, a week, whatever it is, and the re'iyah didn't come yet, there's a chiv b'dika, according to Alter Rebbe, the Alter Rebbe goes to the Taz, it's a big machlokes, the Shach and Taz, the Alter Rebbe holds that a b'dika does help. L'achis man merubah, the Lashon Alter Rebbe, and we're not chayshish that maybe there was a re'iyah dam in between. So if a b'dika came out clean, even a week later, after the b'dika was forgotten for the oina beininus, muteris, there's no problem. Another Nakuda by the Shiv Nikiyim. This is very, very important, and it stresses the Nakuda that we spoke about last week, the importance of calling with a shayla, discussing, not being shy, having it all that you feel comfortable calling, because usually these mistakes you only realize when you call for something else. You have a serious issue, so to speak, in another area. There's 2 common mistakes, and common, I don't mean daily, I mean it happens, and it's something very serious. Many times, people will receive a heter to do the bare minimum, which is Hasaktari, Yemarushin, V'Yemashvi. Often, they're told Yemarushin, V'Yemashvi. The hefsek is taken as a davar pashat, right? For sure, you're going to do it. That's nothing to discuss. What ends up happening? People think that Yom Rishon is the Hafsek. And then they end up tabling on the 6th night. They make a b'dika on what they think is day 7. So they only have one b'dika the entire Shiv Nikim, because the first b'dika is really not day 1, it's really a Hafsek Tana, because you didn't do anything else. Then you table one night early with only one b'dika. So that's a very... More than no. So there, if Chas Shalom something happens, so first of all, you have to be punished 4 days because it played the Shikl Zara. Right? We know that any time before you count the Shiv Nikim, you have to count 5 days. Why is that? It's a big misconception. People think the Re'iyah is Nimshach for 5 days. So, whatever, so you go by average. It has nothing to do. Even if somebody only saw a Kasimov, a stain, which is for sure no Re'iyah, there's no Hamishpacha for 5 days. 5 days still has to be kept, and the reason is because of Plata Shikha Zara. Chazal made a Gezerah. We know that any Zara in the Gulf, if it's Plata, excuse me from the Lashon HaKodesh, if you want to use English words, if there's children, if she Plata Shikha Zara in the middle of Shivnikiyim, she says that day. That day does not count. So Chazal established that before counting the Shivnikim, you always have to wait 5 days, because for sure by then, any Zara, even if it's still there, it's Nisrach. It doesn't have the din of Zara anymore. So even if she be piloted, it's not a problem. It doesn't affect the Shivnikim. So anytime somebody begins counting the Shivnikim, you always have to wait 5 days.
So it is.
Thing if you didn't go to mikvah, only did the Hefsek begin Shvi. Does the Hefsek count, or does
the Hefsek counts, but you need to count another 7 days.
Another 7 days.
Yeah, sure.
And if someone has a Kasimov and they weren't together for 5 days before that, do they start right away?
That's a very good question. So that is Chazal Gezer Loy Shimsha Ata Shimsha. Loy Plug, meaning they weighed one count every single time. It's always going to be the same. So I started. Type is a little bit different. The Mechaber didn't take on this Chumrah, but even today, many Sfardim accepted the Chumras of the Ramah, the Chumras of the Ashkenazim. There are those that didn't. Emes, it's true, but most already today did. So the answer is, even if they were Pirish, that by itself does not affect anything. They actually have to be Pirish, Machmasafik, Machmas Chumrah, whatever it is. They actually have to make a conscious Rishon. If it just happens to be they were together, then the Gzeir of Lashim Shat Shimshon applies.
So if they were in 2 different states.
Oh, so that's the Shemach. So there's a Shach, it's not Mekel like Solomon, but the Maisa, we're still Machma. Because the Indian, if she were to come home, they wouldn't be Parish, right? It's a Hekitim, so she wasn't in town. But if they're Parish, they said, we have a suffix, we don't know what's going to happen, we'll bring Parish, that counts. Or they had a Shiloh and a Bdika, and they couldn't get to a Rav. And then whatever, the next day, 2 days later, the Riyah came, since they were Parish already from the suffix, but that counts.
It's the same thing also if they got during the Shem Nikim, she gets her.
It's a very good Shiloh, yes. During the Shem Nikim, if the Riyah count comes, you don't have to count 5 days. Lamaisi, this time we will have to count 5 days because. But in a case where it's a short Riyah and you can get a Hefsek in 2-3 days, being that you already waited 5 days, you don't have to wait again. There's no Nukshash that exists that you have to wait 5 days for.
You mentioned 4 days before. In our case.
Yeah, so now back to what we were discussing earlier. The toast that if somebody has a shalom counts day 1, the Hefsek Taharas the day 1, and they table early, so you have to be paid 4 days. Because of what we just said, Plata Shikha Zara. Why 4 days? Why not 5? Because the whole 5 days is a Gezerah of Otav Hashmashas. For this, we're not going to be Cheshish so far. You count 4 days, not 5 days, but you have to be Mashlim, what you're missing. So if you table the day early, you're still missing 1 clean day. After the 4 days, you have to be Mashlim that 1 day, make a bdika, and then you can table. So hopefully this never happened to anybody, it never will happen, but
in our case,
yeah. And Yom Shishi,
which is Yom Shishi.
They made the Hefsek, thinking it was day 1, so the count is off. The count is really 1 day earlier. They're thinking it's day 7, but in reality, it's day 6. And Shetel on day 6, yeah.
Say what? They did Yom Shishi and Yom Shishi?
No, they didn't do Yom Shishi. So they only have 6 days. That's another problem. They don't have a big for Yom Rishon. That's another problem. But we'll leave it on the side.
Oh, so they did 7 days from September, not 7 days from
7 days in September, yes.
Which is better than if they didn't do 7 days from the first day that they didn't do.
Correct. Then the second toss is that which is a lot less of an issue. It's still a problem, but it's much less of an issue than the first thing is. Again, we have to be dash Rabbi because the reality is it happens, and if we don't speak about it. It's not going to go away. Through the limit, knowing what to do, and through Chavedim together discussing, that's how the dinim, the chazak each other with the dinim. The second toast is similar to what we just said, but different. Similar in the sense that they think the hefsek is Yom HaRishon. However, for whatever reason, they actually end up counting 7 days anyways. So instead of the first person that made a mistake thinking that Yom HaRishon, the hefsek is Yom HaRishon, that they actually count the Shivna Kiyum, and they only end up counting 6 days. In reality, the Shivna Kiyum only starts the day after the hefsek Tana, right? Make a hefsek, next day is day 1. That's a cloud of Batayba. So the first person counts the same day as the hefsek as day 1, and that's why they tell them night early. Another mistake is some people think, we make a hefsek Tana, that counts as day 1, so I don't have to make a bedika tomorrow, which is also a mistake. Over there, if she tables, we don't tell her to go back. If she counted a full 7 days and make bedika on the last day, it's much less of an issue, so to speak, but it's still an issue because we hold the Emerishan and the Emeshvi is the Yekova. So, okay, Akaponim, the Kait HaKlol Yadich, take this klal in your hand. Hefsek Tana does not mean day 1. With this klal, you'll never make a mistake. Hefsek Tana means tomorrow is day 1. That's a klal. You know what? You're good. Those before. And another thing with Gami Vest is what we mentioned earlier, going back. I'm a Selekis Daman. After Leda, we know that Chav Daman Chedesh, she has a special status called the Selekis Daman, right? The Selekis Daman, the Gemara says, because of the Ram Misparkin, that the trauma on the body. So officially, she's the Selekis Daman. So a common mistake is, she's the Selekis Daman, then Mela, you don't have to keep the calendar. It's also a mistake. The calendar is kept almost as regular. The only difference is you're not kevei vest. What does that mean? If you got chaf, or you got a flog of 42, whatever it is, if it's within 24 months after birth, you disregard it. If you keep it as a vessel shein and kabul, you still keep the einos, but the kviyos to make it into a vessel kabul, we don't say that you're kevei vest. So that's the main nekudas that Tav Chazri was saying that there's a big misconception of these dinim, and they're actually very serious things. So it's important to mention them. It should be in the back of your mind. If it ever happens, you'll know what to do. So we want to start dinner Chakis, which, as we mentioned last 2 weeks ago, that there's a havamina to say that the Etzim men should only learn Chakis, right? We said it's not emes, but this is very, very negeh, very, very important. The Beisesa brings some obvious to Rabbi Nassim. We learn out the Dinei HaChaka from Madrasha. The fact that the Torah says, one should not come close to the wife when she's in Nida, we learn out from this pasuk Dinei HaChaka. Right? So we know there's two Muslim by itself. There's an Isser to be together. But there's also a Drasha that we learn out Dinei HaChaka. Yes, the Mechaber starts off, puts out the case of Aleph. The chiyuv prisha, the husband and the wife have a chiyuv to separate during these days, and that itself, you have to be a chacham. You have to be smart about it, because you have to be sensitive to the fact that, by mistake, she comes too close. Don't jump back. What are you doing here? That's a very wrong thing to do. You have to be very, very careful. COVID. Be respectful, and I'll tell you a secret. We'll see in a second. There's no issur to give her a compliment either. Believe it or not.
There's no issur what?
There's no issur to give a compliment either.
Well, it might lead to dancing.
Okay, you'll dance after the mikvah. So, why am I saying that? Because in Sif Aleph and Mechaber, right away, what do we see? The first thing that we learn, that there's things that you're allowed to say, things that you're not allowed to say. And it's very important to know what you're allowed to say, what you're not allowed to say. What you're allowed to say, you should say. She's not menuda, whatever, sitting in the corner of Chas Hashem. That's not better. But what you're not allowed to say, you're not allowed to say. You have to know both and be makbid both ways. So the Shach brings on the Mechaber what is a person not allowed to say, what is a person not allowed to speak about. It's devarim that bring towards hergel davar, things that will lead to thoughts of hergel davar. That is awesome. That there's nothing to talk about. That is not allowed. That's the main thing. Kalos reish, things that bring. What's the kalos reish in English? Frivolous. Yeah. How do you frivolous? Frivolity. Frivolity. Things of that nature. This is awesome. This is what a person is not allowed to do. To compliment, to be nice, be respectful. It's not only mutter, but it's encouraged. I'll tell you a secret. Even in Gamish Paiskin, yeah, the big kanayim and everything is awesome. I don't know, somehow when it comes to this, they push for it. That's a standard memory Musgar, right? All the chumras usually come from, not usually, but many chumras come from one sect, usually. When it comes to this, I feel that by them, you have to be compliment, you have to be nice, you have to be a mensch, even they got it. So, so that's the main Nakuda. Included in this, what about board games and other activities? So, board games, be'etzim, is something better to avoid because ultimately it could bring, if you're having too much fun, it can bring to Kalos reish. But if there's a real tzedek, shalom bayis, whatever it is. What? Huh? What's that? Checkers, Connect 4, talking about that, chess, things like that. So to say it's also, you can't say it's also, but again, in these dinim, you have to be, you have to know what may lead to what. You have to know yourself, you have to know your situation well. Don't fool yourself. Don't think, it's fine. What's the big deal anyways, right? No, you have to be careful. You can't lead yourself to doing things which are not allowed. But then again, if somebody's having a hard time with shalom bayis, whatever it is, and there's once a story, actually, a man was having terrible shalom bayis, and I think he still is. It's getting better slowly. He was dealing with a certain Rav. There was a happening, whatever. He told him, play board games together.
Oh, wow.
Play board games together. He thought to himself, what? In 10, 15 years I'm married, not once did I sit down to play the board games. It was such a finish to him to sit down to play a board game. It's like, what? We have to do something together. So, such a matziv, it's a shtickle mitzvah. If somebody is not Baruch Hashem such a matziv, if somebody's not in such a matziv, and you know you're good friends, so to speak, anyways, and things are good, and you know yourself, it may lead one thing to the other. So it's best to abstain. Obviously, there's an issue of negia, a few of etzbek. One is not allowed to touch. This is not a pashut. This includes haishata, passing one thing to the other, and also the Rama adds zrika, to throw. Right? To throw something, hey, here's the keys, whatever. One may not do. You put it down, the other person, the other spouse picks it up, and that's it. It's as simple as that. And this is also extended not just to her, but also to her garments. Your garments, even your garments and her garments should not touch. Yeah, you have to be careful. So if you're traveling, again, this is also something, if somebody has OCD, this will get you. You know, you always, stay away, you're too close to Hulu. Again, it has to be done b'chachma, you have to be very respectful, you have to be very nice. If she's too close, so do it in a very non-subtle way. Move over your jacket, be a mensch. You don't have to make her feel bad. Because again, the Isha feels much worse than the Ish, because she became the Nid officially, right? So she feels that it's much more on her. So this is something you have to have in mind. You have to be nice, you have to keep them cheshbon in your conduct. To smell her perfume, the husband is not allowed to. This includes even if they're not on her. So if it's a perfume, which is miyuchad for her perfume, you cannot smell it even if she's not wearing it. Right? Mash'enki by garments, her clothing. It's only if she's wearing it. When she's wearing it, you can't touch it. If she's not wearing it, you could touch it.
You can do the laundry, basically.
Very good. That's exactly what I was about to say. Halacha l'maisa, what does that mean? You can still do laundry. So.
But if you don't put perfume in the laundry, then you can't
Oh,
put it.
there you go. On the way out, put perfume on the laundry.
Sorry, why do the laundry? Perfume.
And do laundry is not allowed.
That's not allowed.
What?
No laundry.
In America. Okay, good. So those are the Megillah Shata. Those are the main things. Achila v'shulchan echad. Yeah, very simple. We all know there's something called a hecker, right? What is a hecker? What is it there to do? What is it there to? There's actually an interesting fakira by the Peskis Maneno, so to speak. Okay, whatever. We'll skip it. It's not. I think it's a little bit silly, but I'll tell you why after if you really want to know. A hacker. What does a hacker serve? It's to remind you that you're not allowed to pass your to each other's food. The Mishnah in Shabbos says because of horrible davar that food brings kiruv, right? So Memela, you have to be careful that when you're eating together, it doesn't bring to kiruv. You have a hacker, it reminds you, oh, now is the time of our chakes. Memela, you're not going to go overboard, so to speak. What is a good hacker?
Is this even if there's kids at the table, whatever it is?
Oh, that's a
Or
very
is it
good
only
shaila.
two-
That's a very, very good shaila. Halacha, yes. Even if there's other people at the table, even if you have a makom kavur on the table and you may archaka, you switch. The piskei dinim la tzemach tzedek is machmer. We're not saying on this. You always need a hecker. This is something important to know. And
Is
even
a placemat enough to separate?
very good. Yes, we're going to discuss now the pratim. A placemat, yes, is good. Before we get to the placemats, let's speak about objects that could qualify for a hecker. The main thing is it has to be there to serve as a reminder. In order to serve as a reminder, it has to not belong there be'etzem, right? It has to look weird, so to speak. It doesn't belong over here, right? So anything which is dark, something which belongs on the table, that doesn't count as a hecker.
Someone touch the phone.
The phone, it depends on
Never on the table.
Oh, never on the table. Okay, good. But then there's another catch. It has to be gevayik tas. It has to be a little bit tall.
What does that mean?
So if you
Phone is
put
not
it
Givayik Tzas?
like that, standing, and
How much is Givayik Tzas?
there's no shit. The place can there's no
Now they make
shit.
it so thin. The case itself
Is what? Oh. No, that's too. More like this. No, this is already gevayik tas.
Why you're recording?
Huh? Okay. So Gevayik Tas is already brought down. That's a lotion in the place can. There's nobody ever gave 3 inches, 4 inches. There's no such shit. The place can write has to be Gevayik Tas. So Gevayik Tas, you don't cheat the system. You have to know it has to be a little bit high, something that you notice. And it can be anything. Something that doesn't belong to the table. Your cup is always on the table, right? So a cup actually would not serve as a hecker, but challah that you're not eating from, right? It's a big shiloh. You're going to your in-laws for the soda. You're going to your chavedim, to mishpacha for the soda. Everyone has the same shiloh. What can you use as a hecker, right? So if you have a challah that you're not eating from, the fact that you're not eating from it and you put it in between both plates, that's a hecker. A kankan is another example which is brought, a vessel that you use to hold water. If this vessel is never on the table and you're meyachid it, may nidasa for the days of our chakas, it counts. If you put it in between both of you, even if you're drinking from it, why does it help? Even if you're drinking from it, and by a challah, if you're eating from it, it doesn't help. Pashat, because a challah that you're not eating from, it doesn't belong on the table. Why is it on the table if you're not eating it, right? There's no shinoi, so to speak. There's no hacker by the challah being there. On the other.
If you're eating only from these pieces, you don't need that. It's enough.
Yeah, sure. So we set one aside,
5 pieces that look the same.
but you can eat from them. Oh, if you can eat from them, it counts.
There's 5 pieces. One of the pieces is not eating.
It's good. You and her both know this piece we're setting aside. You're not eating from it. This is good. No, you eat it after.
To make sure of them.
Sure, yeah.
That can lose any food item.
No, so
Put a bottle of soda.
no. Oh, that's a good challenge. Let's get to Kam-Kam, if not, we'll see if there's a difference of buy a bottle of soda.
Or even pieces?
It doesn't say. But Pashtus is Shmir Shlema. Because pieces belongs on the table. You're not going to eat every single piece, right? You already sliced it up. Some pieces you ate, some pieces you didn't eat. A bulka is something which is shalom. That's not the norm. You have a random bulka sitting between you, and you're not eating from it. That's a hecker. Something which is sliced already. So you ate some, you didn't eat the rest. That would be a problem. So kan, a jug, whatever it is. Not a jug. What's a better word? Pitcher. Thank you. A pitcher. So if you yachid it, you name it also. So what's the difference between a challah and a jug and a pitcher? A pitcher that never belongs at the table, you can yachid it. Only the menidasa. So what happened? Right now, even if you're drinking from it, but the etzem, you and your rebbitzin both know why it's here, right? It's different. It's still serving as a hecker. You look at it, you remember, this one is the hecker, right? Shanking something which the regulus is to be there. You always have soda, right? It's not, there's no kiddush in this bottle.
You don't open it. It's clear that you don't open it.
That would be okay. If you set it aside, you don't open it,
Yeah,
it's
it's
complete.
clear, don't use it.
Yeah, then that's good. If you're drinking from it, it's not
Open
open.
it.
Sorry?
We're like folded after you.
Oh, that's the next thing I want to talk about. It's a mappa,
What if you usually get Cornell and you have
Difference in soda and a water bottle.
no soda. No. It's not a water bottle. It's a pitcher, which is specially designated with many dust. The yak of the pitcher.
We only have Coke.
It's a nice habit.
I'm saying, is that not?
It's not something which stands out. The pitcher, you yak it, right? Coke. We go to simple. You can have Coke there. Coke is it's everywhere, so to speak. It's much less of a heck. Mappa, a table mat, a tablecloth.
You were talking about the shoe.
So we mentioned earlier there's a certain sect of shoes. If you want
No laces.
no laces, that's right. As we mentioned earlier, you can jump, but the halacha is attack after kick. They don't change.
And this is even if you're not sitting next to each other?
Yes, even if not sitting next to each other. And a mappa, a table mat. So the halacha is that if you have each one is eating on their own placemat, that helps. Tonight, even if one, yes.
Even one of them eating on the placemat,
It's
it's
good.
not the other one is taking other people.
Yes, but tonight you don't do it, be made tight also.
Yeah.
Because then it's a shinna. And the Shach points out that if you have a whole tablecloth on the table, you pull it up, and she eats on the table, or you eat on the table, and the other one's eating on the table mat is also good. That's a heck. If you're eating on the table mat, she's not, or she is, and you're not, whatever it is, that also serves as a hecker.
What about if you just stick a napkin? You don't need the old plate. Just stick a napkin.
It has to be visible. Visible.
Visible. You see table, you see plate like this.
Is that
Visible
placement?
to yours, visible there.
If it's visible, yes. If it's clearly visible,
It's out
yeah.
of the plate.
Yeah.
It's a normal thing to
I'll tell you a secret. The day I moved up, when I shoved breakfast, in his house, I came to the soda, and I found by my spot was already like exactly like this, a special napkin.
Just in case you need it.
No, I don't think so.
Thank you.
He did me a favor.
What if do both of the spouses need to be aware of what
Yes.
the hecker
Oh, this
is?
is a very, very good point.
Then that doesn't help.
Exactly. In order for it to be a hacker, both of you have to know about it. If you don't know about it, for sure doesn't help, right? For a hacker, for you, it's not good enough. The din goes on both of them. Both
That means the
husband and
Shabbat you were sitting on the same table. Then also.
wife. Sorry?
So no, there's other Shabbos going on.
The what?
By your Shabbat brachas, it means men and women were sitting on the same table.
No,
Otherwise,
that was
it would
by the
be the
Suda.
hecker.
That was by the Suda Shabbos. The Suda Shabbos. The Suda Shabbos. After I don't remember. I actually don't remember.
Because if you're on two separate, like shower, usually if you're on two separate tables, you don't have that issue, right? Okay.
What, so a mappa is not considered like a two separate table?
No. It's a hecker. Yeah, that's to remind you.
So if you're on the same table, obviously it's a problem. If it's two separate tables far apart, it's not a problem.
Two different tables.
What's if it's two tables like this? They're next to each other.
Another point that I want to discuss actually, just reminding me, if you're traveling in a car, or anytime you're not actually eating by a table, you don't need a hecker. A hecker is dafka matter achil al shulchan echad. If you're eating on one table, in order to allow that, that's when you need a hecker. Tell Chachma that haven't seen it out. I had a brother in Australia, the Tell Chachma has a shub on this, that it's dafka by a table.
With their names.
Huh?
Over there, actually.
The one here, the Bear Moshe is Moshe Shtam, 2 brothers.
So what about eating from the same serving plate?
Oh, very good.
The Bear Moshe lived one.
It was by the Rabbi. Rabbi Wagner, if anybody paid attention, said a story that Rabbi told the Rav to ask him to come. And he made with his hands. That was the Bear Moshe. Oh, you were there? Oh, wow. That was the Bear Moshe. Yeah.
Wait, it's on video.
But Joel, I remember the same.
Yeah. That was him. It was a very special.
He came many times.
Yeah. It's very, very special. Very special.
He's
I
like
never spoke to him about the hate of also.
He was against him.
I know.
Yeah.
I never spoke to him.
Yeah. He was a big like.
He's in general a big machmer, no? No?
Is what it says in face to face. He's from the Hamishpacha.
Very big machmer.
Yeah, but Grad in Hebrew is very big.
Huh?
In Hebrew is Grad very big. I learned the okay, to eating one plate. So before we get to that, leftovers. Yeah, leftovers. One is not allowed to eat. If she drank from something or ate from something, the husband is not allowed to have the leftovers. What are the exceptions to this rule? So what's the issue? The issue is when it's derech chilo. When it's right, you're eating her food, you feel a certain closeness. If the husband didn't know that she ate from it, there's no chiyuv on the wife to tell the husband, "Oh, this is my food, you can't eat it." Why? Because if he doesn't know about it, it's not derech chilo. That's one thing. Another thing is if you have somebody else who's mafsik between she drank something, then your child drank something, and then you're drinking from it, that's also good. Another eitzah is another heter, so to speak. If you take it, you pour it into another vessel. Even if you put it back into the original vessel, you're allowed to still drink from it. Yeah.
Add something to it.
Well, very good. If you add something to it, it's not going to help unless it was full, unless it was damage finished. If it's finished, you can pour a new cup into it, that's fine. But if you're being mashlim, whatever she didn't finish, it's still considered leftovers. So that's a good shame.
That work for food too, just pour it from her plate to your plate.
Yeah, you pour it from her plate to your plate is good. Yeah. Even if you now pour from your plate back to her plate, it's still okay. Yeah. Okay.
Like a bag of chips. She can eat from the bag and you can put it into a cup.
Oh, I'll tell you a good answer for this. One last heter for this is if she leaves the room, it's also allowed. You're eating, she left the room, you can take her plate. Piskei Shuvah brings, if she came back in the middle as you're eating, you're not going to put you to stop. You can push your plate.
Whenever I eat her food, I make sure she doesn't realize she leaves. I eat her. That's my normal approach. It's like a compliment. Like, what happened to the burger?
Said like a
Bag of chips. Oh, bag of chips, yeah. So, that's a good one. Bag of chips. Okay, yeah, let's say you have a bag of chips. A very pashta eitzah is she is allowed to eat your leftovers. You cannot eat her leftovers. Practical eitzah is you have one bag of chips. You don't have a cup. You don't have something to separate it. You eat first, and then she can eat it. Now that she's second chulul, just there's no issue on her to eat your leftovers. So that's one eitzah. If you can put in your hand, great.
Your hand is considered him.
Oh, we're now going to see that's a different issue of a kind of achas. We'll see in just a second. You put it in your hand, you put it in something, you take first, she'll eat from the bag, there's no problem, there's no leftovers, you solve that. Now, what about eating in the same plate? It's a problem, right? You're not allowed to. So, Chila b'kaina achas, the derech klal, you have today, most of the shams are my snacks, whatever, you have micronuts, chips, or whatever it is. So there's two things. First of all, eating her leftovers. If she ate from it directly, even if she stopped eating, but she's there, you can't eat it anymore. Now it's her leftovers, right? Then there's another issue of achila b'kaina achas, eating in one plate, in one serving thing together. That is, you can't take from the same, right? You're munching, she's munching, whatever it is. What do you do? So the Taz brings, it's a couple of days, that something which is meant as a serving plate, something which is not miyuchah for anyone, you brought it to the table as chatichas gedolos, not literally chatichas gedolos, but it's meant as a serving plate. You take it, you put it down, you put it on a napkin, you put on something, there's a hefsek between your taking and your eating, then it's not considered achila b'kaina achas. Achila b'kaina achas literally means you're eating from the same thing. If you take it, put it down, you're already mafsik. So that's the answer for that. Sorry? Yes, the wife also has to do that because again, the shinayim is eating the leftovers. That's one din. That does not apply for the isha. The shenkin achila b'kaina achas. You still have to do this. Let's not that
So how do you know, like, what's the nafka between shirayim and kaina achas? Meaning, like, when does it become? When is she allowed to eat your leftovers, and it's not a problem of kaina achas?
When you stop eating.
And so kaina achas is a problem if you're both eating at the same time.
Exactly. That's a difference. That's a difference. Yeah.
So let's say like a bag of chips that l'chayra you can finish it yourself, but if you look on the back, it says there are 4 servings in this bag. No, really.
Yeah.
So can you say that this is considered like a tampoy, like a?
No, because ultimately you're still eating from the same. You still have to.
No, I'm saying.
Between, you can't put it straight into your mouth. You have to put it down and then take it.
But you okay, fine.
Yeah.
But then you're allowed to do it at the same time.
Yes. Because you're not eating the leftovers, you're putting it down and then taking it. Oh, another important thing about leftovers, it doesn't apply for te'ima. If she just wants to taste something to see if there's enough salt or the smoothie, if it's a good smoothie, whatever it is, if it's just a te'ima, it's not a achila, she didn't actually say, I'm going to finish it, it's just tasting the thing in the mouth, there's no issue of shirayim. Tasting and taking. No, that's different. No, that doesn't apply. Serving, you have to do it the easiest thing with the shinoi. What is the shinoi? A righty, those are the left hand, right? Or you put it, she's sitting right here, so you put it farther away a little bit, and then she takes it and brings it closer. Same thing for her to the husband. She'll put it with the left hand, then she can put it in front of you, or put it a little bit further away, and the husband is going to bring it slowly close to him. If she what? It doesn't say that he has to realize. She does with the left hand. He knows he married the Ishak Sheda. He knows she's doing it with the shilling.
So then what's the difference between a large serving plate and a regular single size plate? If the difference is you're both eating at the same time,
then there's no difference in the plate.
Yeah, so it doesn't make a difference.
It doesn't make a difference. You're right. The Taz was discussing practically how it's usually done. Yeah, but the Indian, if you do one the other way, is also good. One is not allowed to sit in his wife's bed, believe it or not. So there are those that are makel if she's completely not in the city, but this Kachubah brings, if she's completely out of town, one may sit. But again, why go into such a thing? What are you losing? Sit on your bed and there's no issue.
Especially because she has the rollout.
Exactly. The wife's out of town where the laundry is.
Okay. But she is allowed to sit on the husband's bed And when the husband isn't there, she's even allowed to lay down in his bed. If he went to work, he's not in the house, whatever it is, there's no issue for her to lay down in his bed. She'll lay before him.
So before
Photo means in the
No,
room or the house?
What?
Photo means that it's actually in the room.
He's there in the room.
before she's allowed to sit. Before she's allowed to sit.
Okay, one more nekuda. My chayla. You know this dinner is very important. There's something called a chayla. You ever heard of it? Somebody's not feeling well. It happens. COVID, the flu, you're bedridden, you're not much stuff. So the reality is, if you look at the Shulchan Aruch, you'll see that it's much more lenient for her to help the husband than the husband to help her. If anyone gets why? When the husband is sick, Tasha's Kaiche is not himself, so to speak. So the concern for Hergel Dover is much less. The other way, if she's not feeling well, the husband's doing just fine. That we're much more mechli. So the general klal is, if it happens, come with the shayla. Come with the shayla. Yeah, it depends. It's a big difference. If there's somebody else available, can you get somebody available? To what length you have to go to get somebody? What condition do they have? A lot of times, for fertility,
What's the question? To do what?
to help each other. She's sick. She needs help to get up. Many times, there's, especially with fertility treatment, there's shots. I think I mentioned it last time. Maybe not. And many times, there's nobody else to give a shot except for the husband. So it's a shayla, how to do it, if you can do it, if somebody else is available. I'm just throwing out scenarios so you should know they exist, and the answer is it's a shayla what to do. And okay, there's Hashem.
How do you define someone else available?
That's why the shayla. That's why the shayla. That's why I don't want to say it, but case by case.
Okay, one question. Keeping the calendar on like the app, on let's say online, does it have to be paper specifically?
Better.
Better, but what if it's why about not paper?